John now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. Elway can run. Inside the 10. Head first. He flies off the 5-yard line. My goodness.
Rushing 4 ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground and still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
Manning out of the gun. Manning lets it fly. It's caught by Thomas. There's the record for Peyton Manning.
The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stiff arm got him free to the 30, to the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They won it on the first play of overtime.
And welcome to the show. My name is Mundungus Creevy, and I am joined, as always, by my co-hosts Glenn, Cam, and Mr. Boggins. And you are currently tuned in to the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. We are a fan-led, Broncos-based podcast filling you in on all things Denver Broncos. Now, we have a very, very special guest today, and you may know him from movies such as Drag Me to Hell, Inception, and Avatar, but he's also a ginormous Denver Broncos fan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dileep Rao to the show. How's it going, Mr. Dileep?
Gentlemen, it is an absolute pleasure to be here and talk about one of my favorite subjects, which bores people who are not fans, which is the Denver Broncos.
Well, I got to say, I'm gonna start this off with obviously one of the biggest questions ever asked. Have you heard anything about a Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman Deadpool Wolverine movie?
I have not heard anything I can say out loud.
Dang it. Dang it.
I believe they call that plausible deniability.
I mean, I think it's important to kind of jump into like what is your Bronco story? I know we kind of talked about behind the scenes that you 83 is when you jumped on, so like prime Bowlen time, prime John Elway time.
Exactly. That whole transition, like just like the transition we're going through right now, that was like a really big changing of the guard. And I had just moved to Denver. I was born in LA. I kind of grew up all over the world because my dad's an engineer, my mother's a physicist, so we went lots of places. And the last place we've been living was Saudi for about 5 years. And then we're coming back to the States so my dad could work on Stapleton and then the new Denver airport, right? And so we moved to Denver. I didn't really know much about American football at that point. You know, I watched soccer on TV. If I watched anything, I was still kind of a young kid. And my science teacher, and I was really into science, and he was super, super, super diehard. He had season tickets. And so he'd do like a beautiful drawing on the side of the board every Monday morning after, you know, a loss or a win to say what happened, right? And so I kind of got into it there. And then Elway, you know, we got the right to Elway. He was traded right after the draft for Hinton, I think, the guard. And then Bowlen had bought the Broncos the year right after from Kaiser. And so it just became natural. And, you know, there were all these, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there were all these stories about how hard he was throwing in camp at Greeley and like that he was like tattooing the players too. He was trying to show off how strong his arm was. And Dan Reeves, of course, acted unimpressed, but it was like Vance Johnson, all these people were like, dude, it is nuts what's going on out here. You know, and you're like, ooh, that's cool. And so I was like young enough to be like, I'm into this. And, you know, then his career became so absorptive of a kind of drama. It's like it's not like Tom Brady, right? It's not like these people who succeed immediately and are just a parade of excellence from beginning to end. He was super successful and kind of superhuman as a player, but the system around him and the coaching structure and what we were doing as a philosophy, even I could say the whole conference was just losing every Super Bowl, remember, right? His drama was very absorptive to me because he would like get right to the cusp and then we'd lose and break our hearts. And then we'd go a year off and then we'd go again right to the cusp of the Super Bowl and then break our hearts again. And then next year we'll go, break our hearts again. And it felt like we were in this spiral of like the first act going to the second act, right? Like we have not learned how to overcome the obstacle. And then of course, you know, Shanahan comes and is basically like, hello, idiots, let's run like a real offense, right? And then when we won that Super Bowl, I remember just being in tears when we went against Green Bay because I'd invested so much in the team at that point. because I remember feeling like, isn't it what happens every year that we go kill the Cleveland Browns, then go to the Super Bowl and get our head knocked in by some NFC team? Like, isn't that what happens every year, right? Yeah. And it was so depressing. Like, you're like, oh my God, and then imagine being them, you know? So yeah, that's what that was the drama that captivated me. And so I was like, the only Broncos fan when I moved back to LA. Like, I was the only Broncos fan in my class, and everyone was like, "Oh, you guys are going to get killed," and like, of course we did get killed, and then by the Niners. I mean, the worst. Also terrible was that we lost worse every time. Like, it was the first loss was at least decently respectable. Like then it was like the Washington loss, and then it was the terrifying San Francisco loss where we just looked like we were not even on the field.
We win when we show up. That's the
I agree, 100%. And then so I followed them all through the years. In fact, this is sort of silly, but I was on a game show once, and the chat in between was about my Broncos fandom, and it was like Alex Trebek's like, I understand you're a Broncos fan, and I'm like, wow, what a softball question that is. Thank you. That's why I just told him the story about just like crying when they won and they beat Green Bay. So yeah, it's been a part of my life, I think, pretty intimately.
Dileep, you just walked me through like my entire childhood and growing up. we were side by side right there. But I wanted to ask you, like, as an actor in LA, so on Broncos Sundays, do you get together? Have you found some of those other known actors that are Bronco fans, and do you ever get together at any of these bars to watch?
I'll tell you two things about me that are both somewhat disappointing, I think, to other people, and really sane for me. And that is that I don't care much about celebrities. Like some of them are my friends because they're my friends, and I do them before, after, during their celebrity, whatever. And most of my friends that I know are just people, and many of them work in the business, and they're successful. You wouldn't even know their names, right? Like writers and directors and people I know. So there's definitely people I see, but for me, Broncos fandom consists of two things mostly nowadays. Is that A, I get the pack and then watch it here, which I love. Or I'll occasionally, if it's a national broadcast, I'll wander into some place like a cigar bar I go to, or like a sports bar, and I'll sit down with a few diehards that I know, or like and also now we're so atomized. Like it used to be like you go, hey dude, meet me at 4:30, and then you guys would all meet at 4:30. Now it's like I'm texting everyone all over the country, my sister, like everyone just going like, oh my God, can you freaking believe this? They told us he was good. Look at that pat, like that kind of thing. And like you're just venting off whatever whatever ignorance but you're angry about. Like that's what it consists of now. So I don't seek out other fans in that way. I mean, I definitely know there are some. I've definitely made some eye contact with some folks here and there, but like I don't seek that out. It makes my life a lot saner just to live my life,
So obviously through the breadth of all the Broncos history, that you've seen, it's a very easy question to ask, obviously, for someone, maybe should we say a little bit of a layup question, or a difficult question in that, but yeah. What are some of your fondest memories? And actually, if you feel like you want to split it up a little bit, but what are some of your fondest memories of, say, like the John Elway era, the Peyton Manning era, and then do you see potentially some similarities with this new era that's being ushered in?
I'll take the third part first, which is it's too early to know. I think sometimes we're just so excited to be relevant and have a quarterback that actually knows what he's doing that, like, I think we're all getting very excited. I think we have to remember there could be those things. We're in maybe the most competitive division I've ever seen in football. So I don't know about that yet. I mean, I think it's going to be fun to know that whenever he's taking the field, Russ has control and is in command. And that's like what we felt when Peyton or Elway took it. So that way, that's great. A great feeling, reassuring for the fan, right? My best Elway memories, I mean, there's so many, man. Like, that's when your childhood is so ripe and so open for fertilization that, like, you're like, everything you're seeing becomes like written on a huge pageant page. Like there's I can remember in my mind's eye him running away with that little hitch step he has, like with his shoulders tilted forward, and he's kind of moving in the pocket, and he's running for the sideline against San Diego, I think, and he just turns his body to square himself, and then the ball just goes like 65 or 70 yards, like corner to corner, and I think Orson Mobley was like open and just like boom walks into the corners, like, what am I supposed to do here, right? The helicopter was huge. I remember that being like a big play, like when it happened in the Super Bowl, because it was like his will. He was old then. He couldn't. That run was like you or I could have done that run because he's so old and slow there. But his will to win when he dove was amazing. There's also a lot of like weird shit he did. Like I learned a lot of football watching him play. Like Reeves would make him do this quick kick sometimes where like he would kick on third down and like get the ball way down there because he was a decent punter because he's a great athlete. Or just the passes he threw that were, there are definitely people who throw as hard as Elway threw, although not many that throw harder. But the windows in which he would fit the ball and like how it would overspin, right? The spin rate was so high, the ball would be tilting conically inward,
Yeah.
And he was just so Herculeanly strong. But I also think, what I loved is his adaptation. I think he really was, if you look in the first few years, he was trained by one of the, his dad was a great coach. And he was trained to be a great player. And I think he was doing it on talent a lot alone, like for the first couple of years. His talent was just that high. And when he finally started to really break the game down for himself, and it even slowed down more for him, he became more productive. You saw him as a student, and I thought that was great. Those are my Elway memories when he put the trophy up the first time, when he cried when he retired, And I will say, after it's more in the Manning era, but afterwards, my feeling about Elway changed a lot. Like there are certain things he did as a grown man when he became the vice president of operations that really, they didn't sit well with me. The Manning era, his arrival, the day we found out we got him and Elway's on the phone like this with the big thumbs up, and you're like, oh my God, we just got Peyton freaking Manning. Okay. Also, what shape is he in, right? And then that story that came out where he couldn't throw the ball and he tried to throw it to his wife in the backyard in the dark, and like he couldn't get the ball to her, and he was like, I think it's over. And she's like, we're gonna work through it and get this. And then the great mystery, the mirage of like he's back and he was amazing, but he really couldn't throw the ball correctly. Like he still was kind of doing this slingshot motion, because he couldn't feel it. And yet he had that 55 touchdown run. He had that like thing where Julius Thomas looked like an all-world player because he could just see that he was open and put the ball in his hands, and that was it. Like on any other team, that couldn't happen, right? Manning's just his command of the offense, like how much you knew. How do you put it? Like the material advantage you had when he was at the line and everyone grew quiet in our stadium or loud in their stadium. His understanding of what they were doing just put you at such a huge advantage, right? Like you just knew, like he already knows. I don't know, but he knows,
Right.
And then also his just heroic end, just getting us through the Super Bowl so the defense could win, keeping us from turning the ball over when really like the whole quarterback room was, scotch tape and shit,
Yeah.
And he was not in good shape. He was well past his expiration date by that Super Bowl. His arms didn't work. His legs certainly didn't work. He had no legs anymore. And he gutted it out. He helped us win that. And without him, we don't win that. So that's that. And like I said, the third part, I think it's early. And I think we should all be prepared for a very exciting season where we're going to contend. We could easily finish fourth. It's like we just have to be careful about not being like, oh yeah, mother, just take it easy for a second.
He just gave me a heart palpitation on that one. Oh boy. Okay.
All the kids that watch this,
I was getting ready to yell land into earmuffs there for a second.
I'm all good. I don't want to.
Okay, so Shadow Jacker's got a question, and I'm just going to tell you there's only one correct answer. We'll see if you get it right. He says all-time favorite Denver inside linebacker.
Gonna have to say Al Wilson.
Yeah.
So close.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, it is, but
he's my favorite. That's just true. Was I supposed to say Carl Mecklenburg?
Everybody's favorite is John Mobley. That's everybody's favorite.
Just Mike's favorite.
That does not count as an answer to me. I like him, that's ridiculous.
Okay, so I
like John Mobley, but you can make a list of all-time great inside linebackers of the Denver Broncos and have to take 2 full breaths before you got to John Mobley.
All right, so we want to thank Dileep for being on the show.
We've had 2 Mobley references on the show. Orson
and John. Listen, this is deep.
Yeah, that's true. That's how
Orson Mobley was the first gigantic tight end, by the way. I mean,
dude, absolutely
way ahead of his time.
His upper body looked like the body of a left tackle, and his lower body looked like that of a sprinter.
So we talked about Elway, we talked about Manning, and I don't want to go back to painful memories, but you were talking about the Super Bowls that Denver had lost.
Yeah.
Out of all the Super Bowls Denver had lost, which one is the hardest to swallow?
Washington.
Okay.
Without question. And that's because we were in it the most. Mm-hmm. Like, we were up to nothing, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, it was also the first time back. So there was not this procedure of fear and hope. Literally the phrase hoping against hope, which is what I learned what that phrase meant being a Bronco fan. Be like, please don't get tricked into hoping again. Please don't let it happen. And I didn't know to feel that yet. So I was like, okay, so we're back. We're going to win here. This is great. We're up 10-0. Elway's doing it. And then they just, in the next quarter, I think, they basically destroyed the entire team and the game was over. They might as well have burnt the city down. Like, we had no chance. That crushed me the most because I was the most vulnerable to it, right? The second worst one is the 43-8 debacle with John Fox and with Peyton, which I mean, you could take it me through every play. I've watched it a couple of times just painfully. You can take me through every play, and I do not understand. I do not understand exactly what happened there. Like, to be so colossally, momentously, their momentum was crazy, but like, to be just momentously, utterly destroyed from the field for a team that was that good was just terrible. I'll tell you also, one of the most painful Bronco memories I've ever had in my life. I was live with my little sister at the Ravens Broncos home playoff stunning loss. I was in the stands for that, right? So it was double overtime. It was like 6 degrees. It was the coldest game, I think, in history. And like, my beer froze, like, literally, you know? And I was like, dude, this is bad, you know? And then, like, that play, I'll never forget that. Was that over, was it Jacoby?
Raheem Moore.
Raheem Moore. Yeah.
To Jacoby Jones,
To Jacoby Jones, right. He caught the but Raheem Moore, product of UCLA, he's like out of position, leaning backward as Flacco just puts it right over him. And you're like, that's it. It's like so sudden, you know? And I was there. That's a terrible memory. And then we had to walk from the stadium because the Uber line was like 2 hours.
I just remember Joe Flacco when he got signed, when it was reported that he was coming to Denver. I was just so numb. I was just like, this is just so dumb in every aspect. I just don't care. I'm just like, this is all a wash right now. I'm not even.
We don't want to dwell too much on this era that we're talking about right now, but there was a kind of, here we go around the mulberry bush again, feeling about a lot of those like off seasons, right? You're like, oh, I guess hope springs eternal. We have a new quarterback. It's Case Keenum. He's gonna blossom into this year's Kurt Warner / something, and you're like, okay. Here we go, and that doesn't work, right? And then, like, you know, that was a period where I was like, I don't know what Elway's thinking, and I also think, you know, there's this theory I have. It's also like Jordan owning the NBA team he owns, Charlotte, right? Is that like sometimes when you're preternaturally talented and you worked as hard as you did as a young person, and you became great, you may not actually understand what it is to do that when you're someone else.
Yeah.
Right. And you may be a poor evaluator of that kind of situation.
Well,
which is really funny because you're like, he was trying to find himself for so long, like as far as like a quarterback that was like himself, it felt like for so long. And then he's like, then Josh Allen came along and he's like, nah.
Yeah, that blew my mind. I'm like, there you are. You're just taller. He runs like you. His arm is a cannon. Just draft him. You can call him John. And it's like, no.
Dileep, you alluded to it earlier, but your appearance on Jeopardy, and I have a multi-part question for you.
All right.
What? How many episodes did you win? What is the most? It was just one.
Yeah.
Oh, you had that was a great episode.
I won a lot of money. Yes.
What was the most like memorable behind the scenes moment, and what was the final Jeopardy question?
Okay, I'll tell you that. So the third part first. The final Jeopardy question was unbelievably in the category actors and roles. It was don't forget, it was in I believe January 2002. It was John Voight played him on film and John Turturro played him on TV.
I haven't seen a John
Got
Voight
me.
movie in.
Well, it's a long. First of all, yeah, of course, but it's been a long time, so that's why it was easier because it was more contemporaneous. I'll just tell you, it was because Voight was in Ali, and John Turturro was on. If you can believe it, they made a television movie about the rise of Monday Night Football, and so they both played Howard Cosell. And so I bet everything at the end there.
And you got that?
And I got it. Oh yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So I won that. And what was the best moment without question? Because it actually, when it happened, I knew it was an epic moment. It went on to be in the all-time top 10 game show moments in history in the show they had for that. It has been in every version of that show that's ever happened, along with the wedding, the newlywed game where they have that terrible question and he answers it correctly. I'm not going to say it because we're a family podcast here. So that's a perennial one forever, right? And this has now become perennial one. This is what happened. And I'll tell it exactly like this because it was on broadcast. So nothing I say here can harm your license or your regime's rules. Okay.
We have those.
Yeah.
Well, I almost gave him a heart attack when I went mother.
Don't stop. Gonna give me a stroke before this is over.
In the episode before me, there was this little woman who was like 4'11" or 5 feet tall. She was like they had a little stand for her. She's like a middle-aged mom, honestly, like pretty sharp, nice player. They come to her for the little chat, right? But after in the break of the first round, and I gotta emphasize that she was neither a performer nor did she do this on purpose as a joke. There was no twinkle in her eye. She just said this, and this happened. So Alex Trebek goes, so I understand that, because, they kind of vet what story you're going to say, and this is the story that she wanted to tell. And he's like, I understand that you wanted snow on your wedding day, but that didn't happen, but you had a wonderful, wonderful time anyway. She's like, that's right, Alex. I had wanted snow on my wedding day because I always wanted to be a winter bride with snow, and it didn't happen, but I did end up getting 6 inches on my wedding night.
Oh boy!
And the camera, the image on the monitor starts to shake. The operator's hand shakes, which is really rare in television. Those guys are so. He's like, and I saw the camera just move like to the side, and it kind of took a wobble. And Trebek was too professional to do one of these right?
Steve Harvey move.
But everyone was just like, and she did not know what she'd said. So that was by far the funniest thing. I mean, I was laughing. So it was the episode before mine. So I was just sitting there crying, laughing. You're up, and I'm like, okay, all right. I could not take it. It was really funny.
I'm gonna say this right now. I am expecting on walking in the living room, and my 11-year-old going, "Daddy, what does he mean? You got 6 inches?" Oh God!
I know you'll just be like, well,
snow.
When you
snow,
she was excited that snow happened. Now go get me a beer.
That was my face right there. That was it.
That was hers too.
Dude, she didn't even I know she. I'll tell you. I know for a fact she was a performer. I know she couldn't have done it, but if she had been, it would have been the dopest delivery ever because she was like, I did, and I got 6 inches on my wedding night. And it was like she didn't even hear it. It was crazy.
That's the wheel.
Well, for those of you that didn't hear the first time, there it is again.
He asked me. I told him.
Not 5.5, not 6.5.
6.
I did. She was just so excited. It's also as hilarious as the number.
Yeah.
It's not even that bad.
That's great. She's stoked.
Okay. All right. Moving on. So Johnny's got a quick question from the comments. He wants to know who's the most prolific actor you've had the honor to work with, where you kind of had a fanboy moment.
Prolific is a word that I don't think you mean because prolific means works all the time, and so I don't really have fanboy. I mean, I love those actors. I didn't work with him, but I met James Hong, and he's the most prolific actor I've ever met. He's one of the most amazing actors of all time. He acted in a time when Asian Americans had no opportunities, but he was in everything from Chinatown to Blade Runner to this new movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. He's just an incredible icon for Asian Americans, which is me, but also a prolific actor. Literally, I think he has 700 credits or something, 650 credits. He just got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So he's the most prolific actor I've ever. But the actor I've had a fanboy moment, I mean, It's so hard, man. The first time you meet Sigourney Weaver, what do?
Yeah.
Right? You just kind of go, I remember Alien.
Mhm.
God.
Yeah.
You know, like,
God.
you're like, I'm standing next to her right now. And like, you know, when the first time I went on the set of Inception, what's the second day I went to like to start shooting. I'd been, you go to the green room, whatever. And I'd been sort of made up, and I come out of the works, and I walk in the green room because we're about to start this one scene, and right over here is DiCaprio, right? And then sitting on this couch is an actor I had not met, but I knew the name of, is Tom Hardy, right?
Mhm.
And you walk in and I go, well, I know him, obviously, and he's a movie star from every inch of his being. It just radiates out, right? But then I looked at Hardy and I was like, and you know what? That guy's a movie star. You can just tell. Like his physical ease and his being radiated another kind of the rarest gift. You know, it's just this kind of like, here I am, and he stands up and shakes her hand, and you know, he's a little bit like Brando. He's the sweetest guy, and he has this wound in his work that's always present. He's just so talented. Like, both those guys are incredible. So yeah, when I saw them, there was that. When I saw Ken Watanabe on set, I was like, oh my God, this is like the most elegant human being I've ever been around. When Elliot Page was on that movie, he was really kind of like an indie hero, right? And we were like, wow, you're great in that movie. And so I think it's, for me, I geek out whenever actors are good and fun. Like, it kind of just happens. You're like, I'm just so excited to work with you. And it just kind of happens to me no matter what. But yeah, I think with Leo, for sure, he's just so great. Tom, a little bit for sure. I would say those two, if you guys ask that question.
So I gotta ask you, obviously this is not exactly a Broncos question, but this is more of like a director question. So what did you notice as far as the difference? Because you were with you were with a lot of really good directors, but I mean, with Inception and with Avatar, you were with James Cameron and Christopher Nolan, and we all know Christopher Nolan, not just from Inception, but also the very famous of the Dark Knight, and so on and so forth. But did you notice anything specifically, that you took away from, say, like a Christopher Nolan film versus the James Cameron film, and obviously with us getting an Avatar film, now in 2022, did you notice anything that was either similar, different?
I think, and this is actually true of Sam Raimi as well, is that to me, the great film directors, the people who direct film, one of the greatest talents you can have in that is to visually understand what the story is going to look like to the audience while you're making it, which sounds easy, but it is actually really impossible, because it's like you're knowing where the dart is going to go in the dark and hit, and you know exactly what that thing is going to hit, and we're building that dartboard in the dark piece by piece. So like, it is an incredible talent to be able to see in their heads what the composition of every shot is going to be, how they compose together in the edit, and still have the freedom to move in those pieces, right? Because making a movie, and you guys are on a podcast, you understand some version of this, although this is much more granular, and it's a lot more purpose driven. But like, you write something, right? You have a concept of a whole story, and it's visually described, all that, and that's just a stack of pages. And then all these departments take it, and then they make that real, and then we shoot all the pieces like pointillism, right? Like little dots on a Seurat painting. Right. And then they just take all those dots and pack them up in these boxes, and they leave. And then you go home, and then those guys remake the movie again from all those dots. And the director, those guys like Nolan, Cameron, my God, and Raimi, really, like, they know from early on, from their imaginations, they have these visual gifts that allow them to see the compositions of those dots moving in pieces, constantly coming together to make the movie. And they all have that. Now, there's great directors who don't work that way. There's directors who are more verbal. There's directors that make scripts, and that's the stuff. But like, in terms of visual artistry, those guys have that in common. I think Chris is super cerebral, but also his features sometimes, it's the movies have a lower temperature a lot of the time, so that at the moment they heat up very, very rapidly. Jim's movies feel like they're so deeply imaginative and visually contextual that, like, when you're watching certain shots in his movies, you're like, this looks like a painting that like Raphael made, right? Or like Rubens. There's a shot in Titanic where the ship is at the very edge of the frame, and it's in 70 millimeter or whatever they shot it in, 35, I think, but they blew it 30, 70 and some IMAXs. And the whole rest of the screen is completely black. And it's this tiny little man-made machine supposed to be the greatest ship of the history of the world, and it looks like an ant, that kind of thing. Like, they just have this sense of like how to make it happen, and I that's the gift.
Dileep, what is your most precious possession on those shelves behind you?
Oh wow. I think it probably is. Let me go look real quick. Hang on. I think it's probably this. Let me find it. It's one of these. This is the notebook, I think. If it's not, it's one of these. Oh, this isn't the one. But one of these notebooks is the first play I did under contract as an equity actor. And so, yeah, this is it. So this is probably one of, if not the most valuable possession I have. It is my notebooks is how I make a play notebook when I make a play. I Xerox the play out, cut it into pieces, and put it in a notebook like this. This was The Lover by Harold Pinter, directed by Marco Baricelli. I did this for my MFA degree, and I was under contract as an equity actor at the time. And so, it has all my work, habits and stuff. And this stuff, I mean, many of those things are very valuable to me, but this is something that I will never be able to do again, right? You can never do your first play like that again. And so this is of real great value to me. And it reminds me, how to work hard and how my work habits were built.
Yeah.
And I also see the rudiments of how I learn, and sometimes the choices I made that are obvious, and when I wrote something down for the director and I learned, you look at anything you did when you're younger, you're like, oh, sheesh, but I also know that in this production was the first time I think I touched something close to greatness. I touched something really, really out beyond my understanding, that was more subliminal and more subconscious in my work, and it was a really powerful experience for me.
I think it was almost a decade ago where you were at Chapman and did a TED talk on talking about movies and whether they mattered anymore. Essentially talking about the value, or what you found is the value of going to the movies and just in general. How would you compare that same idea to sports, or Denver Broncos specifically for you?
Well, I think one of the most important things that's come to us from our history, that comes from, I think, the early parts of our species, even other human species, is this idea of gathering around a fire, and being together and togetherness. And I think it's actually one of the great challenges in our country and our world today, because of the forces of a certain kind of social media capitalism that makes money keeping us divided and atomized. And also just our own natures. I think our own national identity is very individualistic. I think part of the joy of going to the movie theater and going to the stadium, but also just tuning in on that shot we all know, which is from the side, even for both sides, right where the line of scrimmage is. We are all in a communion, every one of us that didn't know each other today, right? I didn't know any of you guys before we just met here. I know we've watched literally thousands of plays together, fractions of a second apart in time, because of how we were seeing it, all hoping for the same thing, right? All having the same joy, possibility, fears that are being activated. Us going, don't fuck up, don't throw that ball. Oh no, we've all had that. And when you're in communion with other people, you have experiences that are more powerful than if you just can individually judge something at your own scale and time. Right? That's why watching a movie on the TV at your house is not the same as watching it in a theater. Because in the theater, you're in the dark, and they take the odds on you. They make it overwhelmingly large, and you're with a bunch of strangers, which are having this kind of neutral human experience on a large scale. I think that's what sports at their best. They reach into us and give us this vent to root, to care, to feel like one of the tragedies is that everything's become like that. Right? It should be that we just root for our teams, and then if I meet you in a restaurant, we don't talk about rooting against each other because we felt differently about this issue or that person or whatever, and now I just feel like I wish that feeling was our communal feeling outside of it was better, right? So that's in that way, I think that's what films do really well, is we have a human experience if we're open to it, right? You can't force anyone, but if you're open to it and you open your mind and you sit there, it has a great power to move you because you're with your fellow humans,
Absolutely. It's kind of like all the people that really like Jurassic Park, and then we get together and then we go see the new one, which is trash, and they were very disappointed.
Come on.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
Spoiler
Communally disappointed. That's what happened.
Buggins, he just gave the most thoughtful answer we've ever had on the show.
Doesn't matter. Movie was terrible.
All right. Now I know when we started out, you said you had about 30-ish minutes. You got time for another question, or?
Absolutely. No, go right ahead. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So Jeremy from Case by Case Sports, which I don't know if anybody knows, he's the guy that is now doing the Avalanche play-by-play on the network. He's going to be doing Broncos play-by-play. But he asked, do you have any major projects coming up?
Oh, yeah. So I have these two small independent movies coming out over the next couple of years called Avatar 2 and 3. I have some very small parts in these movies, not like my part in the first one, which was much bigger. But this is a different kind of story. It's about the family, and it's less so about like that op center, what we were doing there. But I am in them, and I enjoyed making them a lot. And we went down to New Zealand and shot a bunch of it. They've taken a very long time because the detail involved is unbelievable. Like, it's just crazy what they're doing. So I'm really excited for people to see it. I think it's going to blow minds again. I think what Jim has done is just on the level of, like, you know, all-time cinema in terms of its visual impact and what he's trying to say. And I really respect him as an artist for his content as much as the stuff he's able to achieve on the visual scale. So yeah, those two things. You know, with COVID, there's been a slow return, and things are going. And there's things I'm sort of working on. We'll see what happens, but not yet. Other than those two, that's what I got right now. And in the next year, things will be different. I'm sure I'll have more.
What I heard is you do not die in this next one. That's what I heard. You do not die
Spoiler!
in this next one. Spoiler! You heard it here first.
If it is to be believed that someone said I'm in both, I think you can conclude that. Although I have to tell you, Sigourney died in the first one, and she is in the scheduled cast of the second one.
Okay,
so
fine.
Who knows?
That's fine.
Dileep,
I don't trust IMDb anyways.
What's the best on-set perk?
Catering.
What is the
cheese.
best on-set perk? No, cheese is good, but
watching Bronco games on Sundays.
I mean, I've done that in my trailer. That's fun. Although you're constantly like, oh, fuck, I gotta go. Like, you know, there's that thing, and so you got to do that. Yeah. So I think the best on-set perk is you don't have to stand in the lighting space of it. The stand-in does. At the beginning, when I first started making movies, I was like, why does anyone have a stand-in? That seems so lame. Like, do it yourself, right? And then you go there and you're like, oh, right, I would be standing right there for 2 hours. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I got to save my energy to do the acting, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess to me, that's a great perk. I'll tell you one thing that's really important, and I hope this really does resonate, and I hope that it's heard, is that when you work on a movie, okay, especially a big budget film or television show, and they have all these people, like, do you want a coffee? This person standing right by your chair, 3 people standing by your chair. Do you need a coffee? Do you need lunch? Do you want a snack? Like, you can start to think, especially when you're younger, you're like, see how special I am? Like, they're here to, like, do all this stuff for me. And anytime I want to go anywhere, someone walks me there, a car drives me. And if you're smart, what you really realize, and I think this is the bottom line truth, because it's a bottom line business, and that is that when they're waiting for you and you are actually on a set and they're doing something to get ready to shoot, the minute they're ready, you have to go and shoot right then. And if it takes them even 30 seconds or a minute to go find you because you went to get a coffee or you went to go walk yourself to a snack, guess what? They're burning money for no reason at all. Yeah. And it's in the thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, sometimes dollars per 20 minutes, right? And so they would rather pay someone $25 an hour, $20 an hour to be a gopher, 3 people do that, right? Then burn that money. And it has nothing to do with your princeliness. You know, it has everything to do with, please be ready to shoot when we told you we're paying you. And that, I think, is like, once that you know that every perk you're getting is just a perk to make that happen better and faster.
So help me kind of wrap my mind around this. Like, obviously, this is what makes professional action professional, but you're acting in the Avatar movie, right? You're on screen with someone who in the movie is an avatar, like big as well. Yeah. Obviously, they don't look like that when you're acting with them.
No.
How do you not like giggle or laugh or like break character all the time, like looking up at this tennis ball box thing?
I would say the fundamental answer to what you're asking is just experience, right? And you know how to be serious about your job, right? But the other part is, it's like, you know, when Hamlet goes out on the battlement where it's to see the ghost, right? You got to know that there's a battlement, even though you're on a stage, right? And there might be like a suggestion of like a projection or something, or like there might be a wall behind you to make it look like you're on the castle, right? But you got to hear your footsteps clinking on the stone, right? And you got to walk over there and be like, oh my God, it's my dad and he's dead, right? And you got to do that like as real as like what it would be like to see that, yeah? And when you see it, it's what affects you that makes that thing work, right? And the challenge is not to, oh my God, there's a tennis ball there. Like, we all know this. So, although on this movie, some things are very different here. But yes, in the first one, there were sometimes tennis balls marks. Sometimes there's not. If you're good enough, they just go point to a point and you just act to that point. But or not good enough. That's not the right word. If you're used to it enough, when you've gotten used to it. The thing I think it's really, really challenging and interesting is that you go inside yourself to your imagination and you go, what is it like to really look at that?
Yeah.
Right? Rather than go, this seems so not real. This is preposterous, right? Because that's fear. What ends up doing, why people laugh, or why you go, I can't, this is so ridiculous. Look at that. It's not a dinosaur. The reason you're doing that is fear. And it's a fear that, like, I won't be able to make my reaction to really seeing it real, right? And, like, if you remember the very first Jurassic Park, it's one of the greatest shots in cinema to me, is she's talking about a plant, and then the camera's on a two-shot, and he stands up. Alan stands up, Alan Grant, and he pulls his sunglasses off, and he's, and then she's talking, and he reaches his hands down and turns her head, right? And then she rises up and pulls her glasses off, right? That is what makes the next shot great. Yes, it's the first CGI dinosaur. Yes, it's like, oh my God, what is it, a dinosaur, right? Like, yes, of course. But it's their reaction of like, I can't believe what I'm seeing.
Right.
That is so grounding and lets us leap to that, right? So
Makes
I
it
think
real.
the challenge is, it's like, you know, if a person's playing a king, right, or the president or something, what makes the person the king is not the person going, I'm the king, dude. It's the crowd bows, right? The crowd treats that person like they're the king. The crowd makes the king. And that way, like, the challenge is not to laugh. The challenge is the deeper challenge of like, what is it like to talk to someone that is not a human?
Are you saying that the Brachiosaurus is a Super Bowl 32?
You know, I can see where you're going with that. It's a stretched metaphor, but I'll give it to you since it's your podcast.
That's also a pun. Good job.
All right, so I kind of want to spin it back to the Broncos, and this will be one of the last questions, unless you guys want to one in. I know that on a previous interview I'd listened to, I don't remember which one. You were talking about Pat Bowlen and the kind of how the culture was with the Broncos when he owned the Broncos.
Yeah.
Do you think that under Rob Walton, the Broncos can kind of get back to that culture?
Hard to say because I've never known him as a sports owner, but I will say, like, you know, my first doubts about him were like, oh my God, here's a person who inherited his wealth, right? And Bowlen inherited some of his wealth, but he made a lot of it himself too. And Walton did not make most of his money. He got most of it from his father and then expanded the business. But I will say he was an important leader in Walmart, right, when it grew from being a regional company to being a much larger concern. His father was the genius, right? But he's been a good steward of it, and I think he's had a lot to do with its growth. So in that way, I think he understands business. I think he understands how to compete, and I think he understands what it takes to win to some degree. Whether he will have, I think what was a rare quality about Bowlen was that he was able to be present in those buildings and to never have too hard a touch on anything, but his presence was throughout. And everyone knew if they failed him, like when McDaniel screwed up, like he had to go, and everyone knew it. It was like, you know, Pat's not happy, and that's the end. And I think what happened at the end, and it's sort of sad, you know, in terms of how it all happened, is that as he started to fade away, he wanted some trusted advisors to keep that up. But there was not enough leadership. There wasn't enough concrete on the floor presence that held people to account. It was more like a triumvirate working with each other, right? And there was no executive. There was no leader that was like, no, I'm going to stand in for the owner. This is not good enough, right? And so I would hope that, given that he literally owns the team, right? It's his possession, that he will demand, without putting too interfering a hand on it, which I think he's smart enough in business not to do. I hope he has a smart enough sense to be present and to also demand excellence from people who are doing jobs he doesn't necessarily need to understand and do that.
No.
Okay.
It was the digital dissection aroused God to the galaxy. That's the interview I was listening to.
Oh yeah, those guys are great.
See, I listened, Boggins.
No, you don't. Okay, I have one final question for you here.
Yeah, please.
It is the most important question.
I already said that.
No, it's not, because yours was wrong. Mine is right. Without context, did the top kilter?
So the most direct answer to that is listen to the end. If you listen, right, what you hear is that it wavers.
That's right. That's my voice.
I don't know what's going on.
That's why I'm like, the ending is not that ambiguous. You just cut the.
That's what I said. If it wavers at all, that's it.
And also, the most important part of all that is not that it does or doesn't waver, whatever. It's that he sets it spinning, and then when he sees his kids, he just runs without seeing what the answer is, right?
Yeah.
And that, to me, shows you what is most important in his heart, and that in our humanity, we will embrace what can give us joy without waiting to see if it was actual, right? Which says something about us.
That's good. That's good.
So I have one final one without saying, being contractually obligated to the movies that you were a part of. What is the best movie of all time?
Oh no, don't do this.
I think it's really hard to do that because it's hard to say how you evaluate things. So the older you get, I think, and the more older I've gotten, and the more I watch, and the more and the passion I have for it, right, as a medium in theater too.
Yeah.
It's not that I feel like one movie is the best or this movie sucks. I always see things that work and don't work, right? So for me, the best films of all time are the films that work the most, right? They do the most to me imaginatively. So I would think, like, to me personally, I'll give you a few, okay? The best movies for me are Citizen Kane, 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Empire Strikes Back, The Thin Red Line, The Third Man, The Piano by Jane Campion, Pulp Fiction for sure. These are movies that I just can watch over and over again. And there's so many others, man. Like Barry Lyndon is one of the best movies ever made. You know, no one sees it. It's amazing. What do you call? There's a movie by Kubrick called The Killing, which is great. There's parts of The Magnificent Ambersons that are some of the greatest filmmaking ever done, and then the studio wrecked it. Right? It's still really good, but it wasn't Wells's movie. You know. By the way, there's a movie called Tokyo Story by Ozu, which is, if not the greatest movie ever made, it's really up there, right? And you just have to know, like, sometimes movies like this, the less you know, the better. You just put the disc on, or you get the stream, and like if you guys haven't seen Tokyo Story, just watch it without any context. Don't let anyone tell you anything about it. Don't read anything about it. Just put it on. I think it's from the 50s. And if your heart is not wide open by this Japanese movie from a culture you don't participate in, but if your heart's not just wide open in your hand going, my God, people are the same and we hurt exactly the same, right? That movie is so great. Like, these movies are that's why when I love movies, it's like I love them because they teach me something so deeply about how my feeling apparatus works, right? I get revelation of my own being in the moment. And that's, I think, what art can do. And that's when film is an art. It's like that.
Well, I was going to say, you passed the test, because if there's anything that I know between Boggins and I, we like to break the rules. So it's okay. I asked the question of, what is the best movie?
I can't answer. I can't just say one. It's just too hard.
There's one thing I know.
Tommy Boy with Chris Farley. That's the one.
You didn't say Lord of the Rings, which is that was the test.
That's fine.
I like that movie a lot.
Okay.
I like that. I've seen all three of them recently, and they really hold up.
Not the Hobbits. Don't do the Hobbits.
Those are not successful to me.
Thank you. Agreed.
Harry Potter's better anyways. That's fine.
No, it's not.
Oh, God.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you, man.
You got one?
Keep up the good work.
Okay. All right. So we want to thank Dileep for being on the podcast with us. It has been fantastic. Is there any place on social media that you would like people to follow you on?
Oh, yeah. You can follow me at Dileep Rao. Apparently, I have to use my middle initial on Twitter. I am Instagram. I think I'm Leapers500, which is LEEPERS 500. Always good stuff on there. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Well, again, we thank you for being on the show.
Gentlemen,
if you want
an
to
absolute pleasure.
check all of our other stuff. If you want to hang out in back, we'll be there. We can talk with you in a second. I'm just going to close out, or you can hang on camera. It's up to you. It's your call.
I'll go to the back. I'll go to the back like an idiot actor, normal actor. You're done. Get off stage.
Sounds good. All right. We'll see you in a second.
Okay.
All right. So that's going to do it for the show. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, turn on notifications so you can know when we post and when we go live. Also, make sure you tune into our other podcast, Wild Wild West, which goes Wednesdays at 7:30, 6:30, 5:30, 4:30. Nothing Rhymes, the Orange and Blue podcast every Thursday at 7654. And Broncos Breakdown with Bronco Bill every Friday at 2, 1, 12, and 11. And while the Avalanche are in the Stanley Cup Finals, we are doing play-by-play, and that's with Jeremy Case from Case by Case Sports. It's absolutely fantastic.
It's fantastic.
He is. I have no shame in saying probably the best play-by-play guy streaming online. It is fantastic. So make sure you check that out. And with that, we're gonna head out. We'll see you guys later. Go Broncos. Peace out.